Good day, everybody. I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson on subject and object pronouns. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English language arts. Grade 6. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of subject and object pronouns. So this is a continuation of a previous lesson. And in our previous lesson, we also did subject and object pronouns, but we specifically focus on the two lessons, which was to choose between subject and object pronouns, as well as compound subjects and objects with I and me. So we're just going to continue by going on to the new lesson, which is compound subjects and objects with pronouns. All right, so once again, our chapter is subject and object pronouns. Our subject is English language arts. Grade 6. And the lesson that we are focusing on today is compound subjects and objects with pronouns. All right. So when it comes to our subject and object pronouns, right? Remember, an object, it takes the place of a noun. And you can use a subject pronoun as well as an object pronoun, right? And we will basically show how you can use it, whether it's before or after something, right? But firstly, we're going to a subject pronoun. We can use a subject pronoun as a subject of a sentence or a subject of a clause, right? So we can use a subject pronoun as a subject of a sentence or subject of a clause. And when it comes to subject pronoun, right, it tells us who is doing something, right? Just think of, you being the subject of something. They usually, like, in arguments, they're like, yeah, you are the subject of why we are having this argument or fight, Mimi, yeah. All right, so when it comes to subject pronoun, right, it tells us who is doing something. And a subject pronoun, it's usually at the beginning of a sentence, right? So subject pronouns we would usually find at the beginning of a sentence. And if we look at a few subject pronouns, right? Our subject pronouns are words like I, that you'll find at the beginning of a sentence, you, he, she, it, we, and they. And remember, I said that your a pronoun takes the place of a noun, right? So instead of saying the name of the people or the names of the things, right? We can just use we can just use words like he, she, we, they, it, I, you, for example, right? And if we look at an example, right, of a subject pronoun or where we basically have a subject pronoun, subject pronouns doesn't necessarily have to be immediately at the beginning of a sentence, right? We can even start our sentence, for example, where it says, after finishing the experiment, I showed the teacher my results. So as we can see, right, as much as we say that a subject pronoun, it is usually at the beginning of a sentence, right? But in this case, of course, it's not immediately at the beginning of the sentence, right? But if we were to eliminate like this whole part over here, or maybe put it somewhere else, then we would say, I showed my teacher the results after finishing their experiment, right? So this is basically just us twisting it, right? And putting after finishing the experiment first, I showed my teacher the results, which means that I is my subject or is the subject pronoun within that sentence. And then we have object pronouns, right? And we can use an object pronoun after an action verb. An action, something that somebody's doing, right? That is an action verb. And you can also use an object pronoun after preposition. So remember, we can use an object pronoun either after an action verb or it can go after a preposition. And prepositions are words like at, for, of, on, to, or with, right? So it can basically come after those words, whether those words is first, whether those words is last, right? But it comes after those words. And when we look at object pronouns, right? Object pronouns are words like me, it is you, him, her, it, us, and them. Those are object pronouns, right? So now it is not referring to me saying something or doing something, right? But it's almost like me making reference to you doing something, making reference to the next person doing something, making reference to him doing something, her doing something, it doing something. Instead of saying we are doing something, I'm saying us, right? Instead of saying they did something, I'm saying them. It's like you are referring to something else or someone else, right? But you're not referring to you and the people that basically did the action. All right. And if we look at an example, right, of an object pronoun, it says, after finishing the experiment, my teacher showed me the results, right? So my teacher showed me the results. So basically, me is the object pronoun, right? Because the teacher showed me the results, showed somebody else the results, right? Which means that the teacher, which is my, is not the object pronoun, but me is the object pronoun, right? Because me is also used after the action verb, which is showed. So it says my teacher showed the results to me. So even if we were to change that sentence around and say that my teacher showed the results to me, right? Then to is our preposition, right? And me is our, I'm gonna put here OB for object pronoun, right? So which means that the pronoun me is used after our preposition, which is to. All right, so once again, before we continue with subjects and objects pronoun, remember an object takes the place of a noun, right? So instead of saying Nadine, instead of saying, sorry, I'm actually on the loudest. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? My sound is actually on its loudest. All right. So we said a pronoun, it takes the place of a noun. So instead of saying Nadine, instead of saying Anna, instead of saying Jack, instead of saying whoever's name, right, you can use words for subject pronoun. We can use I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. And for an object pronoun, right, we can use words like me, you, him, her, it, us, and them. That is basically to replace names, all right? And once again, before we go on to aplusstudents.ca, we can say that we use a subject pronoun as a subject of a sentence and it tells us who is doing something, right? And it usually comes at the beginning of a sentence. And then we have an object pronoun that comes after an action verb, which is an action that you're doing, right? Or it comes position and at, for, of, on, to, or with, right? I can actually hear myself if I go on if I go on YouTube, then I hear myself on the live. Should I put it like that? Maybe check your settings, check your sound. Who else cannot hear me? Guys, who else cannot hear me? Should I continue? Do I have to, because I hear myself on my side. All right. All good. Okay, so let's continue. All right, so now it says when a pronoun is connected to a noun, right? So when a pronoun is connected to a noun with a word and, right? So remember and is a conjunction and it basically either connects words, it connects sentences, right? It connects phrases, right? So when a pronoun is connected to a noun with the word and, like for example, Rick and I, or Rick and me, right? Then it can be very hard to tell which pronoun is correct. So then it's sometimes very hard to say, like, okay, this is the object pronoun, or to say this is the subject pronoun, right? Because sometimes you won't know when to use, should I say Nadine and I, or do I say Nadine and me, right? So now we're going to find out how can we use a subject pronoun and how we can use an object pronoun when we have the word and, right? So basically it can be very hard to tell which pronoun is correct, but we are going to find that out. To tell which one is correct, look at the sentence without the other noun, which means that look at the sentence, for example, without the word Rick, right? So it's like you removing Rick, and then you see basically if it's a subject that is doing something or if it's the object that is receiving something, right? So, for example, if we say Rick and I discussed the results with the teacher, right? Then it's almost like you are removing Rick. It's like you're moving Rick and I, or Rick and, sorry, you're removing Rick and then you see if that sentence makes proper sense without Rick and. Like, for example, I discussed the results with the teacher, right? Which means that this is a subject pronoun, right? Because I did something. I discussed the results with the teacher. So I, that is our subject pronoun. And if we were to say the teacher discussed the results with Rick and me, right? Try to remove, remember we said try to basically look at the sentence without the other noun, right? And then if we were to remove Rick and, then we can say the teacher discussed the results with me, which means that this is our object pronoun, right? Because it means that the teacher discussed the results with me. And it comes after, look at this word, it comes after the preposition, which is with. So try to picture those type of things. Remember, we said that a subject pronoun, it's usually at the beginning of a sentence and it basically shows or tells us who is doing something, right? And then we said an object pronoun either comes after an action verb or it comes after the preposition, right? And then basically it's the object pronoun is the receiver, right? It's where someone is doing something to you or giving you something. And that is why we're saying the teacher discussed the results with me. And that is the object pronoun. All right, so now let's go to A plus students.ca where we are going to go over compound subjects and objects with pronouns. All right, and we spoke about our subject pronouns as well as object pronouns. I don't think that we have to go over that again. So, what we'll do is we'll just go straight to our activity and then we will go to our test. So it says you need to select the correct pronoun to complete the sentence. So we're either going to choose the pronoun. I'm not saying you must say which kind of pronoun it is, but we need to choose the correct pronoun. So if it's a subject pronoun, then we either need to use words like I, you, he, she, it, we, or they. Or if it's an object pronoun, then we need to use words like me, you, him, her, it, us, or them, right? And remember, a subject pronoun, it tells us who is doing something, and it's usually at the beginning of a sentence. And an object pronoun, right? It comes after an action verb or it comes after a preposition, right? And the prepositions are words like at, for, of, on, to, or with, right? Subject pronoun does something, is usually the giver, it's usually somebody who does something, who is doing something. And the object pronoun, right, in my own words, I would say is the receiver of something, right? Someone is doing something for you or to you. All right, so here it says the pilot invited and his brother into the cockpit for takeoff. So the pilot invited and his brother into the cockpit for takeoff. So we need to choose the correct pronoun to complete the sentence. All right. So if we were to choose the correct pronoun, then we would say the pilot invited him and his brother into the cockpit before takeoff. Right? So we're not he, but him, right? Because he is basically the person who does the action, but him is more, like I say, the receiver of the action. All right. We're going to the next one. It says we need to select the correct pronoun to complete the sentence, right? So, keeping in mind, subject pronoun, it's basically the person who does the action, and it's usually at the beginning of a sentence. It doesn't have to be directly like literally the immediate word that's at the beginning of a sentence. And an object pronoun, it is basically the receiver, right? It is where something is being done to that person or thing. So we can say, how can and the other employees be more productive? So we can say, how can we and the other employees be more productive? Because we are referring to us, right? All of us being productive, we being productive, right? So we is our pronoun, so which means it's our subject pronoun. All right, so now let's go to our test, right? Where we are going to, it's the compound subject and object with pronouns. So we're going to select the correct pronoun to complete the sentence. So just for fun, Ella drenched he and his toys with the garden hose, or Ella drenched him and his toys with the garden hose. All right, so we can say Ella drenched him and his toys. So since we're talking about him and his, right? Him is the correct pronoun. All right, the layout editor and do we say the layout editor and I, or do we say the layout editor and me want to schedule a photo shoot with you? What is the correct pronoun? All right, so we can say the layout editor and I want to schedule a photo shoot with you. So I is our subject pronoun. That is correct. Mr. Townsend escorted. Do we say Mr. Townsend escorted we and our children to our hotel room? Or Mr. Townsend escorted us and our children to our hotel room? All right, so we will say Mr. Townsend escorted us and our children to our hotel room. And we're specifically using us because us comes after the action verb, which is escorted. All right, we need to select the pronoun. It says receiving the award for most improved team completely surprised them and their coach, or surprised they and their coach. All right, so we will say receiving the award for most improved team completely surprised them and their coach. All right, let's look at the next one. It says Connor impressed. Do we say Connor impressed she, or Connor impressed her and Nina when he mentioned his favorite movie is Rashomon? Look at the word impressed. That will basically tell us if we need to use a subject pronoun, which is she, or if we need to use a object pronoun, which is her. So we can say Connor impressed her and Nina when he mentioned his favorite movie in Rashomon. All right, so the next one says the loud roar of the freeway outside distracted him and his client, or distracted he and his client. The loud roar outside distracted him and his client, or distracted he and his client. All right, so if we look at the word distracted, right? Distracted is a action verb, so we can say the loud roar of the freeway outside distracted him and his client. Because remember, so that's an object pronoun, right? And we said an object pronoun, it comes after a an action verb or a preposition. So in this case, that's an action verb. So him is our object pronoun. All right, so for Thanksgiving dinner, Ivan and, do we say Ivan and me or Ivan and I made the gravy and the butternut squash? So for Thanksgiving dinner, Ivan and me, or do we say Ivan and I made the gravy and the butternut squash? We need to select the correct pronoun. Is it the object pronoun me or the subject pronoun I? All right, so if we were to choose the correct pronoun, then we will say for Thanksgiving dinner, Ivan and I made the gravy and butternut squash, which means that that is our subject pronoun. All right, the last two, and then we'll do an activity. And says, please don't interfere with, do we say please don't interfere with they and their private affairs, or please don't interfere with them and their private affairs? We need to choose the correct pronoun. Is it a subject pronoun or an object pronoun? Subject pronoun being that the person is doing the action, or is it an object pronoun, right? That is either after an action verb or after a preposition. All right, so we will say, please don't interfere with them, right? Because them comes after with, which is our preposition, right? So, which means that this is an object pronoun. All right, let's do the last one. And the last one says, how can us and the other employees be more productive, or how can we and the other employees be more productive? We need to choose either the subject or the object pronoun, us or we. All right, so we can say, how can we and the other employees be more productive, which means that that is a subject pronoun and it's telling us who is doing something, right? All right, so we've been doing our chapter on subject and object pronoun, right? We did it in our previous lesson as well as today, where we had to choose between subject and object pronouns. Remember, firstly, a pronoun, it takes the place of a noun. So instead of giving the name of the person, instead of saying Nadine, instead of saying Joy, instead of giving whoever's name, you can use words like he, she, um, I, right? Or if you want to refer to someone doing something, right? Somebody, it's like someone receiving something that is being done to them, you can refer to it as him or them or they, right? Or them. So we have subject pronouns and we have object pronouns, right? A subject pronoun is, it tells us who or what is doing something, right? And a subject pronoun, it usually comes at the beginning of a sentence. It doesn't necessarily have to be the first word of the sentence, right? But it is basically the first person or thing that is doing the action, right? And our subject pronouns, it can be words like I, it can be you, it can be he, it can be she, it can be it can be they, or it can be we, right? That is subject pronouns. And then we have our object pronouns, right? And our object pronouns, it either comes after the action verb, right? You must know an action verb, it's something that someone is doing, right? It's the action that is taking place, right? So it comes after the action verb, or an object pronoun comes after a preposition, right? So at, of, with, and so on, right? And object pronouns are words like me, you, she, him, them, us. Those are object pronouns, right? And usually, object pronouns are the receiver of something that is being done, right? Whereas the subject pronoun is basically the person or thing that is doing the action, right? All right, so this is the end of our lesson on subject and object pronouns. Thank you very much for joining the class. Till next time, guys should have a good evening further. Goodbye. Oh, and all the best for the results and getting your report cards. Um, wishing you guys best of luck, and I really hope that everything is going to be positive, straight A's, right? So just praying and hoping that you guys get good results. So, goodbye.